Hi, everyone. Welcome to Question Period Rewind. I'm Donna Skelly, Speaker of the Legislative Assembly of Ontario. 1986, what a year. In Toronto, a TTC ride was 45 cents for kids and $1 for adults. Over at Honest Ed's, you could get a pair of pantyhose for 77 cents. And the population of Ontario was about 9 million people. Now, let's see what the hot topics were for the province at that time.
The next item under routine proceedings will be oral questions. The member for Leeds.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure how I should address the minister. Is this accepted, the Minister of Bamboozlement? Is that appropriate? All right. Minister of Consumer and Commercial Relations, Mr. Speaker.
Minister of Consumer and Commercial Relations. Fine.
About a month ago, the minister announced an 8-point plan that was supposed to protect homebuyers from the problems that are being experienced all over this province. The minister's committee to study the problem, another committee of implementation, was supposed to report on December 5th, and we've heard nothing yet. The minister now tells the press that he will be unveiling a plan which, from all reports, is no different than the one announced last month. Will the minister tell the House that he will bring in legislation to protect homebuyers, or is he simply going to re-announce the toothless measures that only tell people that they might get ripped off?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member raises a question that has concerned all members of this House, the problem affecting people who are trying to get delivery of their new homes. We have been looking at it for some time. I will say to you that we are working with the industry. This is an industry-driven initiative, and I have seen their proposal, and I think it will address most of the problems. I've said, and I will say again, it will not address all of the problems, but the best defense that any purchaser can make is that before they enter into a deal is to get good legal advice.
Supplementary? New question? Oh, supplementary?
Supplementary.
The member for Oakville.
Mr. Speaker, I wrote to this minister on March the 12th of this year, predicting in my letter that unless he brought in legislation protecting new home buyers, that with the rising house prices, there would be incentives in the builders to try and cancel the deals and resell the contracts at significantly higher prices. Exactly that happened recently in the Markham situation, where some 44 people, I believe, had their contracts canceled and re-offered to them at $15,000 to $20,000 more. In light of this situation, which the minister has been aware of all of this year, will he now consider some legislation at least giving interest on the deposits of these people until closing dates?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, the particular case that the member raises is one that is still under investigation, and there's no determination that there was anything that was illegal. It may have, and I don't know this yet because we haven't completed the investigation. It may be unethical, it may be immoral, but we don't know whether or not it is illegal. And under our legislation, you cannot legislate ethics or morals. And what I am suggesting is that when the provisions that are brought forward within a week's time, I think they will address many of the concerns expressed by the member.
Final supplementary, the member for Oakville.
Conduct and morality, Bonnie.
Order. Supplementary, the member for Brantford. No, the member for Oakville.
Mr. Speaker, I have literally dozens of letters from potential new home buyers in my writing, which I've forwarded on to the minister, outlining the problems that they're facing. I have also outlined to him a simple 4 or 5-point program to resolve most of the problems. As early as March of this year, he has completely sloughed aside any suggestion of legislation, even of the simplest form, like the registration of the lots before selling of them. Will the minister now consider that, taking that simple step, requiring registration of the lots before they can be sold to a new home buyer?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I mentioned yesterday, it's the previous government that changed the Planning Act in 1983 that allowed selling of lots before registration. We are looking at that whole problem, and when we address it, you'll see our response to it.
New question?
Question, Mr. Speaker, to the Premier, if I may. Mr. Speaker, the Premier last week in the House stood in his place and assured employees of this province that they would be protected from being required to work on Sundays. He said he would bring legislation in immediately if that were necessary. We see in the press today the Globe and Mail of this morning, where the Premier has announced that he has no intention whatsoever of bringing in legislation to protect workers who are required to work on Sundays.
That's not what you said yesterday, Ian.
Would he tell us the current position of the government with respect to this legislation?
Premier?
Speaker, I didn't see the press report you're referring to in the morning, but I said if it was necessary, we'd bring it in. The position's quite clear.
Supplementary?
Mr. Speaker, 2 years ago at Christmas, there was very few violations of the law. There was general adherence to the law by the employers of this province. Last year, a problem began to arise. At present, there have been over 6,000 charges laid against employers for opening on Sunday. The Attorney General has made it clear in the press today, in another statement, that he would not bring in legislation because, as he said, the Bay and Simpsons have decided to stay closed.
What about Loblaws and Miracle Mart? Why didn't you talk to them, Ian?
Is it the policy of the government that they have no intention of protecting anyone other than the Bay and Simpson employees from the requirement to work on Sunday against their wishes?
Premier?
I think the policy of the government's very clear, and we are waiting now for the judgment of the Supreme Court. I'm sure my honourable friend is familiar with that, as one who practices more time at the bar than he does here in this House, and once we have clarification from the Supreme Court of Canada, we'll deal with the matter.
Final supplementary?
Well, Mr. Speaker, what we would really like to know is what is the policy of this government? The Premier says it's eminently clear. On the one hand, he says he's going to bring in legislation to protect employees. On the other hand, he says he's not going to bring in legislation. Yesterday, the Attorney General was also quoted as saying that he's going to leave it to the municipalities as a local option as to whether there should be legislation within the municipality to do this. Could the Premier finally make a statement and tell us where he stands on this important point, as the law is being flagrantly violated on a regular basis every Sunday?
Premier? Order.
The position of this government is extremely clear, and I'm sorry that it's been obscured and blurred for my friend opposite. And I think he's probably misinterpreting his own difficulties with his own leader on this particular issue and transposing that on us. We're very clear. The law of the land stands and should be enforced. Now, if you have trouble understanding your own position, I'd be very helpful to elucidate on the matter. I have a number of quotations here about how you wanted to change the policy. But the law stands, we will enforce the law, and that's where this government stands.
Order. New question. The member for Scarborough Centre will have his turn if he wishes at a later time. New question. The member for York South.
Why bother asking? They can't answer it anyhow.
Mr. Speaker, I have a question for the Premier arising out of the announcement made today by his colleague, the Minister of Consumer and Commercial Relations, about pension reform. The Premier will no doubt be aware, since he was on the Select Committee, of the consensus of this House with respect to indexing of benefits. He will know that Treasury officials have been saying for years, since the consensus was reached, that there was no financial problem with respect to indexation. He will also know of the accord that he signed, which states specifically that the government is committed to introducing the reforms as set out in the Select Committee, which deals specifically with the question of indexation. I'd like to ask the Premier if he can possibly justify why, in the one opportunity this House is going to have to discuss pension reform, in the one time this House is going to have to deal with pension legislation, why the government missed the opportunity and deliberately put off to a task force a relatively simple, straightforward proposition, the idea that people's pensions should not be eaten up by inflation.
Premier?
Speaker. To my honourable friend, and I understand your position on this particular matter, and you understand mine on this matter. We want to proceed with the question. But, you know, I don't want to be unkind, but some people I know have a tendency to oversimplify some very complicated matters. You know, and for the sake of a particular ideology, are prepared to launch into a number of areas you don't completely understand all the ramifications of. And you can stand up and make your speeches about it, and I understand all that. But it's like a lot of other matters we have to deal with in this House, like equal pay, pay equity, and other things. We have to think these things through out carefully and all the ramifications, the effect on all of the people of this province, develop a consensus and move forward. And when we have that responsibility, you have to at least respect the right of this government to move carefully, to move intelligently, and develop a policy that's sensitive to all sides. And that's exactly what we are doing.
Supplementary.
Speaker, the Premier can patronize all he wants, but it's not simply the New Democratic Party that he's patronizing. It's millions of workers out there who are being shafted because you're not interested in protecting them. That's ultimately who you're insulting. That's ultimately who you're condescending to. Let's be very clear about that. Let's be very clear about that. I'd like to ask the Premier, by way of supplementary, Mr. Speaker, if he can confirm. Since he says we know his position, I don't know what the Premier's position is. All I know is that when it comes to a basic matter of reform, he is stalling. He is stalling, and he is denying workers something which many executives have, and when it comes to the securities field, you're prepared to roll over and give them what they want, but you're not going to do the same thing for the workers, apparently. I'd like to ask the Premier if he can confirm that it is in fact the policy of the government that so-called surpluses, a concept which the Premier's right, I have difficulty comprehending what a surplus is when we believe that all the money in the fund belongs to the working people of this province. If he can confirm that it is the position of the government that, inflation protection aside, surpluses belong to the employers and can be withdrawn by the employers once this freeze period is over.
Premier.
I think the Minister was very clear on the matter. He said there will be a freeze on any surplus withdrawals, and then we'll look at the situation in the context of inflation protection. As you know, and I don't want to sound patronizing, but if anybody sounds that way, it's you, believe me. Let me just say that one of the problems with inflation protection is that those particular plans that don't have a surplus are would be under different financial pressure than the ones that do have a surplus. It's an easier question for the ones that have generated a surplus in the past because they're there. And in a sense, if you just force those funds to bring in inflation protection, you're punishing the more successfully administered funds or the ones to which have been oversubscribed. So we have to investigate all aspects of this situation. I think most fair-minded people looking at this would say it is a complicated issue from all sides, the question of contributions, the question of inflation protection to what extent, who carries the liabilities. I mean, where I disagree with my friend opposite is he would want to go load, charge, tax, and tax our province right out of competitive ability, and then you would be the first one to stand up and squawk when business moved away.
Final supplementary, the member for Bellwoods.
We don't need a lecture on responsibility from somebody who says one thing in a campaign and another thing from the Premier's office.
Right.
Supplementary.
My question to the Premier is this, and I am genuinely mystified at the level of incompetence that the ministry has shown in this. You have now been in office for 18 months. You made a commitment in May of 1985 to pension reform, which you understood was based on and included inflation protection. You understood that at the time. My question to you is, why over the last 18 months have you failed to come up with a single idea, a single proposal, a single concrete specific legislative reform, and now in December of 1986 you are appointing a task force to put the question off for another year? Why are you doing this?
Premier.
Honorable friend, and I understand my honorable friend's criticism. I mean, generally the criticism runs, why didn't you do this yesterday? Why didn't you do this before? I remind my friend that we've had a very ambitious legislative schedule, and we've undertaken a great number of significant reforms. I also tell my friend opposite that it takes a considerable amount of understanding of the issue, consensus building, and solving some of the real and practical problems that are attendant there too. And that to that end, we have the help of highly respected people like Cliff Pilkey, who understands the difficulty of this thing, is prepared to help us in devising a policy that's sensible, affordable, and at the same time will protect workers, exactly what we said we will do and what we will do.
New question, the member for York South.
Mr. Speaker, the people of Ontario now know that they couldn't believe, that they shouldn't have believed the Liberals back when they promised it before. Why should they believe the Premier today? Why should they possibly believe the Premier today?
Premier?
I'd like to ask the Premier...
Was that not the question?
No, it's not. I'd like to ask the Premier, Mr. Speaker, a question on the front page of the Business News, Mr. Speaker. It's announced that two companies, a United States giant, Shearson Lehman Brothers, and a company connected to the Bronfmans, are buying into McLeod Young Weir, making McLeod Young Weir the biggest investment dealer on Bay Street.
Great.
I'd like to ask the Premier, it's not until you get to the back page of the report on business that you discover that, in fact, Shearson Lehman Brothers are now the subject of a major investigation by the Securities and Exchange Commission, who are investigating the possibility of illegal insider trading by officials of Shearson Lehman Brothers in a $470 million U.S. leveraged buyout of Scheller Globe Corporation of Toledo, Ohio. I'd like to ask the Premier just what protection do the people of the province have in this Bay Street giveaway that your minister announced last Thursday?
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I say to my honourable friend, he's started to cotton on to all this inflated rhetoric like Bay Street giveaway and casino economy and Wheel of Fortune, and suggests that there's something untoward about McLeod Young Weir here because of some SEC investigation in the United States. I'd say to my honourable friend that I think his rhetoric on this matter is a little inflated. Now, what happened is, as I understand it, with that particular deal, it was moving ahead anyway. Shearson Lehman already owned, I think, 10% of McLeod Young Weir. Am I right? Under the previously announced policy, they could move up to 30%, which is something they've done. They've taken in additional Canadian capital through one of the Bronfman companies, and they've now established a capital base which I gather will make them the largest in Canada. It's a Canadian-controlled company, and they'll be able to compete internationally for business. Now, that, as I understand, what has transpired in the entire matter. And you should stand up and celebrate that and say, here we are building Canadian companies with a capacity to compete internationally. Surely that's something you'd be proud of.
State law.
Speaker,
Supplementary.
I applaud. Please applaud him. I think it's terrific. Let the members. If the members of the Liberal Party want to applaud corporate cannibalism and corporate irresponsibility, let them. Let them be seen for doing what they is. Great. Applaud again. Applaud again. It sounds terrific. It sounds terrific. Mr. Speaker, by way of supplementary, since I did not hear an answer to my question. I did not hear an answer to my question. I did not use exaggerated rhetoric. What I referred to was a giveaway, which is the only description I think a neutral observer could come up with in terms of what the government announced last week. And I said, what protection do Ontario consumers have when it's announced on the back page? It's like we don't have upstairs, downstairs. We have front page, back page. Front page, we have the takeovers announced, and on the back page, we have to find out who's going to jail. Now, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask the Premier, what protection do the people of Ontario have from the kind of activities that are going on in the United States, and how can we be assured that these activities aren't going to be imported directly into Canada?
Premier?
Mr. Speaker, how can we... I assure you that socialism won't be transported from some country into this country. Sometimes it sneaks across their borders, and we have these problems. But let me tell my honourable friend, we still have a Securities Act in this province. We still have a Securities Commission that's very highly respected right across this country and indeed internationally that will enforce the rules pertaining to the securities industry. And anyone that violates that, and if you've got evidence that someone's violated those rules, please let us know, and we'll launch an investigation. But I'm sure my honourable friend, having been legally trained, would not want to presume someone was guilty before there was a trial. I assume my friend would take that particular point of view. And so what I am saying, you've got a Canadian company here, protected by the Securities Act, the Interior Securities Commission, so one of the most efficient regulatory bodies in this province and in this country. And if you've got any suggestions or anything untoward going on, please stand up and tell me, and we'll have it investigated.
Final
Speaker,
supplementary.
just so the Premier will understand precisely what I'm saying that there is now no way in which this can be effectively controlled, effectively regulated, because you've given up the ability to regulate because you've said anything goes. And that's the problem, and that's the issue. By way of final supplementary, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask the Premier, is it the policy of the Government of Ontario with respect to the other partner that's bought into McLeod Young Weir, that is to say, the Bronfman interest, the so-called SEMP company, which stands for Charles, Edgar, Minda, and Phyllis, who is the holding company for the children of Sam Bronfman. I'd like to ask the Premier, is it the position of the Government of Ontario that corporate concentration is a problem or not? Why are you asking the Select Committee on Economic and Financial Affairs to discuss corporate and commercial concentration when at the same time your rules that have just been totally thrown out the window by the Minister on Thursday are encouraging the takeover of Bay Street by large Canadian financial institutions and holding companies such as SEMP?
Mr. Speaker, I think my honourable friend is unwittingly misleading himself and a lot of other people about what transpired. It is not a question of anything goes. If I said anything...
is also sauce for the gander.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I withdraw, Mr. Speaker, and I'll substitute the word bamboozle. He's bamboozling himself, and he's trying to bamboozle a lot of other people. I mean, I understand this sort of inflated socialist rhetoric. It's the same kind of thing that we heard 100 years ago from your predecessors. But let me tell you, Mr. Speaker, that is not what is happening in this province. We still have a Securities Act that will protect these people. It's not a question of anything goes. It's a question of building a world-class competitive financial sector in Toronto. Right. And we're not prepared to sit by and see this go. My friend who's been trained abroad is oblivious to what's happening in the world, in Tokyo, in Geneva, in Zurich, in London, England, in New York. And we have a choice, my friend. We're either going to participate in a big way or we're going to be swept out. And we're not prepared to allow that to happen. And I tell you, your idyllic dreams of what maybe used to be are irrelevant in the world of 1986 and beyond, because your dream would take us backwards, not forward.
New question. The member for Cochrane South.
Funny, the Premier didn't say that 18 months ago, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have a question. Vous avez un problème, monsieur?
You got a problem? You were not here before.
Mr. Speaker, I have a question to the Attorney General. The Attorney General, and it arises out of the police investigation into the Solicitor General. The last page of the report indicates that the decision to lay charges against Mr. Keys rests with the Attorney General in his office after a review of the police report. The Attorney General indicated with respect to Sunday shopping that his role was not to instruct the police on the laying of charges. His role was not to become involved in an investigation leading to the laying of charges. Is the confusion of this police officer not understandable in view of the fact that the Attorney General, in reality, went beyond his jurisdiction and interfered in what was essentially a police matter at the time that the offense occurred, and a police matter at the time that the matter became public? And will he not agree that in retrospect he had no business getting involved in an investigation with the police, exactly following the process that he indicated with respect to Sunday shopping?
Minister.
I thank the Leader of the Opposition for his question. The Leader of the Opposition, Tuesday only, regrettably, But let me say that the honourable member is quite wrong. The investigation was requested by me because there was pressure from, among others, the opposition party to have an investigation by the police. We selected the Metropolitan Toronto Police to conduct that investigation rather than the Ontario Provincial Police, who would normally have done it for obvious reasons. The police made their report and had the advantage of whatever legal advice they wanted from the Crown Law Office as to the sufficiency of the charge. The police then, acting on their own, laid the information as they are entitled and obliged to do if they have reasonable and probable grounds. And that, of course, is the whole story from beginning to end.
Supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Stan Richards, Mr. Richards, who I represented at a compensation hearing before I arrived here, will be pleased to know the Attorney General's opinion of the involvement of members of the legislature on these matters. The fact of the matter is that the Attorney General politically inserted himself into something that was police business. It was beyond his jurisdiction, and it's not the first time this Attorney General, on a political basis, has intervened in something he has no business as Attorney General being involved in. Mary Eberts said on July the 3rd that you attended a meeting at which evidence was reviewed and information was exchanged, along with the counsel of the Liberal caucus with respect to the Kaplan inquiry. You intervened on a political basis and asserted your right to address convocation on June the 26th, at which you misinformed them as to what was happening in the legislature and the rules of procedure of this House. Will you not re-examine your conduct and stop the partisan interference as Attorney General in something you have no business in?
Well, as usual, Mr. Speaker, it's easy for the Leader of the Opposition to make statements alleging abuse of office inside the privacy of this chamber. We'll see to what extent he stands behind his mouth elsewhere. Now, the reality is, It will just be a question of time. It will just be a question of time, and we will see. Now, the honourable member knows, because he has had a full account of it, about the small role, I wouldn't even call it a role, that I performed in connection with these special committees' work. I also exercised my right ex officio, along with my honourable friend, as a bencher of the Law Society of Upper Canada, to meet before the benchers in order to give them my assessment of the legislation that confronts this Assembly, including the Conservative bill with respect to paralegals. I don't feel I did anything wrong in attending that. I'm glad I did, and I think I gave an accurate and fair account. And in any event, if I hadn't, I'm sure the honourable member who was then present would have said something. He didn't.
New question. The member for Ottawa Centre.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my question is to the Minister of Community and Social Services. And I'd like him to explain the peculiar position that this government and his ministry is taking on child care. He knows that he can now provide, right now, operating grants and income testing for non-profit centres. But he doesn't want to do anything, he tells us, until he can work out some kind of agreement with the federal government that's going to include the for-profit centres. Can he explain to us why he's going to let tens of thousands of families wait while he works out some kind of deal with the federal government when he could be providing lower cost and greater accessibility than is going to be the case for tens of thousands of families who have their children in non-profit daycare centers?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I understand that the honourable member is well aware of the fact that approximately half of the licensed daycare spaces in this province are in the commercial sector. And while she correctly says that there are thousands of families who have children in the non-profit sector, she must also recognize that there are equally thousands of families who have children in the commercial sector. And we are concerned about the rates being paid. We are concerned about the inability of low middle-income parents to get any subsidies. We are concerned about the low wages being paid to daycare workers, but we are equally concerned both in the nonprofit center and in the commercial center. And I think it would be quite inappropriate for us to send out the message that those particular problems would only be resolved in half of the system and no attempt would be made to resolve them in the other half of the system.
Supplementary.
What the minister is saying to us is, I've got one big problem. I can solve half of it, but I'm not going to. I'm going to solve the whole thing at once, and I'm depending on the feds to do it. And what he's doing when he does that, Mr. Speaker, is to underline the commitment of this government to the commercial sector of daycare. Can I ask the minister to justify that position in the light of the fact that he told the daycare lobby that future initiatives of this government with respect to daycare are going to be in the non-commercial area? There's no question about that. There's some question about it today, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, there are two distinct issues in the honourable member's question. And the first one is our future intent. And we have clearly indicated in the whole area of social services, in the future we are going to put more stress on the non-profit sector than in the commercial sector. That's a fact. We have not changed that. But at the same time, Mr. Speaker, the member knows that in many communities in this province, there is a high proportion of spaces available only in the commercial sector, and in some communities, even large ones like the city of Hamilton, 85% of the spaces are available only in the commercial sector. We cannot turn our backs on those parents and those children who choose to use that option. Now, the member is also aware of the fact that all the ministers of social service will be meeting with the Honourable Jake Epp on January the 26th, and he has indicated to us at that time he will give some sense of where the federal government is going. Subsequent to that meeting, we will make our own Ontario decisions as to how we are going to deal with the situation based upon that new information.
New question. The member for Kitchener.
Mr. Speaker, I have a question for the Minister of Citizenship and Culture. Mr. Speaker, many newcomers and many long-term immigrants to this province, and particularly senior citizens and women, require interpreter services to access the government, particularly in cases of emergency and I might suggest in dealing with social services. Does the government have any plans to train these interpreters and to provide them for those in our midst who are not comfortable in either English or French?
Minister.
Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, I think one of the first bodies who needs some help in interpretation is this very legislature, but I don't know if you qualify for any of our grants and programs. Nonetheless, I think translation and interpretation is one of the crying needs of many of our multicultural communities, especially long-term immigrants approaching senior ages. The ministry has a number of programs which I'm sure all of the members are aware of. We start, first of all, by training community interpreters, which is becoming more and more of a professional occupation. We also give dollars to official interpreter service organizations, and we're increasingly funding community groups who also pay for volunteers who do the interpreter training. Again, the ministry is very cognizant of the need for interpretation as a professional service, and we are also providing services to other ministries. For example, we have a magazine called New Beginnings, which is our first signal to other ministries to take advantage not only of language translators within our own ministry, but within the community itself.
New question. The member for Cochrane South.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, on a point of order, to correct the record from the Attorney General, I did address convocation after the Attorney General. I did correct the impressions that he left. I'd suggest that the Attorney General read the minutes of convocation, read the July 3rd transcript, and reassess his position.
Order. It's not a point of order. If you do have a order, it's a point of information. But if you wish to place a question, order. If you wish to place a question, please place it. Good.
Macho man, come on. Mr. Speaker, I have a question for the Minister of Industry, Trade and Technology. Could the Minister of Industry, Trade and Technology indicate to the legislature the state of unemployment in Northern Ontario, the problems of the resource sector, and what he intends to do to help the workers and the industries of the North out?
Minister?
As Mr. Speaker, as was mentioned has been mentioned on several occasions, we are not happy with the unemployment rate in Northern Ontario. We want to see it come down, and we are working very hard to put in programs that will bring that unemployment rate down.
Supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, this same minister said the same thing in the spring of this year, and has done nothing about it since that time. The minister will know that while the overall province-wide, the rate of layoffs declined by 1% province-wide in 1986 compared to 1985, even though 1985 was significantly higher layoffs by 16.5% than in 84. He will know that even though the provincial average increased by 1%, that the layoff rate in northwestern Ontario increased 254%. The layoff rate in northeastern Ontario increased 47.9%, and in eastern Ontario the layoff rate increased by 3%. You've had a significant increase in layoffs in northwestern, northeastern, and eastern Ontario. You have done nothing about it as a government. Order. When are you going to start helping the workers of these regions?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member fails to state such facts as that there are 156,000 more people working in the province of Ontario, that we have the lowest unemployment rate in all of Canada, and that we are working very hard.
New question. Order.
Trousers lurking in the shadows.
The member for Algoma would like to ask a question, if the members would allow it. The member for Algoma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a question for the Minister of Environment, who is consulting behind your chair. If he could return to his seat.
Note, only some applauded.
2 or 3 applauded him.
I would like the Minister to explain. I would like the Minister to explain why it is that his ministry charges Ontario Hydro for a spill that is estimated at 8.8 grams of PCBs into the sewers of this city, spills that occurred at Gloucester Street and Adelaide Street, but at the same time does not charge Ontario Hydro for spilling thousands of times as much PCBs into the Mississauga River in northern Ontario.
Minister.
As the member may know from previous answers that I've given in the House, I as the Minister do not instruct the Investigations and Enforcement Branch to lay charges against any specific person who's in violation. They have a blanket authority from me to investigate all of these matters, regardless of where they are in the province, regardless of whether they're in the public sector or the private sector. And when the Investigations and Enforcement Branch has gathered sufficient evidence that may be used in a trial, they then proceed with the laying of charges and establishing of a court date along with the court, of course, and they proceed to, at that time, address the matter. Now, I understand that if there is any evidence that is forthcoming, and if the member has some evidence that would be helpful in regard to a particular court action, we would be pleased to have that evidence. I would suspect as well that our ministry, as it does in almost all of these cases, would have the Investigations and Enforcement Branch, in fact, investigating to determine whether charges should be laid.
Supplementary.
Mr. Speaker, surely the Minister is aware that Ontario Hydro spilt waste oil from a transformer that it was moving into the Mississauga River at concentrations of 70% PCBs. That's almost pure PCBs. And yet as yet have not charged Ontario Hydro, whereas the spills that I referred to that are subject to prosecution in Toronto were measured in parts per million. Surely the minister is concerned about the effects on the tourist industry and the fact that the fish in the Mississauga River may pick up the PCBs, and is concerned that Ontario Hydro would allow such a spill to take place even after they were directed by his own ministry to ensure that the open drain to the river was cut off before the transformers were moved.
Right on.
Yeah, certainly share the member's personal concern as a representative in the area in my capacity as the Minister of the Environment for activities which are detrimental to the environment, and certainly I'm aware of the situation. I know that the member himself was deeply interested in it immediately as it happened, drew certain things to the attention of our ministry which were very helpful. I think I should point out, Mr. Speaker, that when the charges were laid, for instance, in the hydro case in Toronto, that they were laid after, I think, several months of investigation, that in fact they were not laid immediately. And I would know that in the situation you've drawn to my attention, again, that because of the seriousness of it, that our investigations and enforcement branch would indeed be conducting an investigation, and when sufficient evidence has been put together to proceed with the court case, we would be happy to indicate through the means of a press release that the charges have been laid.
New question. The member for Carleton East.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to address this question to the Minister of Education. Recently, I attended the Parents Teachers Association meeting at St. Matthew's High School in Orléans. Over 500 parents were present. They expressed their concerns that the province is not moving quickly enough to provide capital funding for separate schools, which are suffering from overcrowding because of the shift of students to these schools under equal funding legislation. Minister, what is your ministry going to do to resolve this problem of overcrowding?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the honourable member for his question and for his many vigorous representations on behalf of his constituents in that important part of the National Capital Area. As I have indicated to this House on previous occasions, the new government has, in its first 18 months, substantially improved the capital grants to Ontario school boards. Insofar as the matter of separate school extension is concerned, we made a commitment when we took office, Mr. Speaker, that we would not release any of the funding for extension purposes until the law was enacted. That was done in late June of this year, 1986, and since that time, we have released something like $33.2 million in capital grants to separate school boards to help those extending separate school boards meet the kinds of needs that the honourable member has identified. As I recall, some $1 million of that capital grant allocation has been awarded to the Carleton Separate School Board to help with projects like the St. Matthew's School to which he made reference. But we're not, Mr. Speaker, going to solve the problem overnight, but I want to assure the honourable member and his constituents in Carleton East that we will do everything possible to meet the real needs of those fast growth areas.
The member for Durham East.
Mr. Speaker, a question to the Minister of Corrections. Would the minister be so kind, now that he's been alleviated of one of his responsibilities, would he be so kind to ensure myself in this House that he is negotiating feverishly with his other cabinet colleagues to ensure that the Corrections Ministry's estimates will be coming forward as soon as possible, since we always seem to be getting bounced?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, to the honourable member, yes, we are looking forward to the estimates in correctional services, and having conferred with the Treasurer's office, the present moment, the date happens to be approximately late January.
Supplementary.
Well, since we have had so much time in preparation of your estimates, would you at least assure me that you will be anticipating the kinds of questions that you and I have already previously had in terms of those inmates who are going through the system will be getting adequate both health inspection and dietary evaluation to ensure that all possible avenues are looked at in terms of those inmates and their rehabilitation?
Minister.
I can assure the honourable member, thank you, that we are doing everything possible to be sure that all inmates' rights are responded to appropriately, whether it be in the field of human rights or that of dietetic conditions.
New question, the member for Scarborough West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Premier. Premier, in the last few weeks, I've been receiving a lot of letters of congratulations for the legislature through me around the passage of Resolution Number 1 to make Ontario a nuclear weapons-free zone. Page has just brought you a sample of what my first question is. A lot of these letters have lines in as follows from a young Sheila Brown. Where do we go from here to make sure that this resolution is implemented in a meaningful way? Mr. Premier, it's been almost 3 weeks. What are you doing to make the will of the legislature the policy of the government? Can we expect a government statement such as that passed in Manitoba and in the Northwest Territories soon?
Premier. Well, Mr. Speaker, I recall the debate, and I congratulate the honourable member for putting forward the resolution, as he did some 2 or 3 years ago, as I recall, and I believe I spoke on that resolution at that particular time, and I supported it at the time, and as I said, even though I do not vote on private members' resolutions, it's one I would have supported as a statement of principle and a statement of our collective protest against the insanity of the global arms race. Now, that being said, how does one translate that statement or that sentiment? And as we know, the things you're talking about mean different things to different people, and I viewed it in a moral context, is how we would translate that into specific public policy. How far does it go? What does it actually mean? And my honourable friend, familiar with the rules of this House, as others are, will be aware that sometimes to take a resolution, a statement of principle, and I think that came forward eminently clearly from this House, and translate that into a specific act is a different question. If my honourable friend has specific ideas on how this thing should be translated into legislation, you just sent me over something, I'm not sure what it is, but I'll read it, then I'm obviously interested in the ideas that you have. But I can say to my honourable friend, I don't have a specific piece of legislation in mind.
Supplementary?
I'm always willing to help, Mr. Speaker. You know that. That first piece of information is just a statement of the same principle, but it would be a government statement, which I think is an important distinction for us to make as our first next step. Following that, Mr. Premier, I'd ask you if you wouldn't look at the whole question of tritium exports. We have total control over the production of tritium through Ontario Hydro, and yet I think there is a really major question as to whether or not we should be exporting tritium. And I want to know if you could tell me at this point what your government's policy is going to be on the export of tritium, especially since the Canadian Fusion Fuels Technology Project, under the control of Hydro, is presently discussing using tritium technology with military interests in the United States.
Premier?
No, the export of tritium is a federal responsibility, but let me tell you, from our point of view, we are of the view that it should not be exported for non-peaceful purposes, and we've said that before, and that is the view of this government, and therefore any exports would be checked out with that particular policy in mind. So that's the answer to my honourable friend's question.
New question, the member for Downsview.
I have a question of the Attorney. Thank you. I have a question of the Attorney General, Mr. Speaker. January 9th, 1986, the leader of the opposition at that time, and with reference to Sunday shopping, stated, and I quote, "If the law is not changed, thousands of unemployed will be denied the opportunity of part-time work." Would the Attorney General comment on the question of whether, in fact, part-time work would be created in this province as a result of the opening up of Sunday shopping?
Well, Mr. Speaker, a complete analysis has not been done to answer that question, but it is unlikely that any part-time work will be created in significant amounts by any such change. But I point out to the honourable member that that was the expression of opinion of the Leader of the Opposition on January the 9th. He's now been overruled by the honourable member for Oakville, and a different opinion has been taken.
Well done, with regard to Sunday shopping, Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask by way of supplementary, the Attorney General,
Order. Perhaps the member would wait until the members allowed him to be heard. Order. 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 We'll just wait. Order. Supplementary?
By way of supplementary, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask the Attorney General if he would agree with this comment made at the same time by the Leader of the Opposition. And I quote, "The government is willing only to review the legislation with no commitment to broaden it. The progressive conservatives, on the other hand, are prepared to stand up and be counted, to say we must change the law to greatly expand Sunday shopping in response to demand."
Conservatives said that?
Oh, but the honourable member for Downsview doesn't understand. They've changed their minds since they saw the poll, and now they take a different view. And, of course, that question and answer are out of date. That was given in January. You must be up to date with this party. Look at the honourable member for Oakville will give you the true answer about where that party stands today. Who will tell you where it stands next week, I can't imagine.
Now for a real
question.
Named Oscar. We're part of Oscar from now on.
Order. Order. No, order. We'll just, I'm sorry to tell the member for Sarnia he can't ask his question for a while. Order. Order. New question, the member for Sarnia.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the newly appointed Solicitor General, and I raised this question with some trepidation in his role as Solicitor General, knowing how harshly he responds to questions from the opposition as Attorney General. But a week ago in this House, I raised the question, sir, about the concerns that have come to my attention from volunteer firefighters who are being denied the opportunity to study on weekends at the Ontario Fire College in order to upgrade their education and their training. These are volunteer firefighters. Now, I know you're up to date on this issue, and I wonder, since a week ago, if you could give me some indication of what your ministry has done with respect to reviewing that particular problem, because your ministry is not providing the funding or the instructors to provide the education for these volunteer firefighters.
Minister, I want to tell the honourable member, the chairman of the Justice Committee, that the new acting Solicitor General is much better behaved than the Attorney General and is very grateful for the question that you have asked. I am aware of your concern. I am not aware of how to respond to it, but I will get schooled up in the next few hours and will report to the honourable member very quickly. Thank him for his question.
I'm not through yet, Mr. Speaker. By way of supplementary to the newly appointed Solicitor General, who will apprise himself, I know, of this problem very shortly, there are some 300 applications, sir, that have already been set before your ministry with respect to volunteer firefighters who wish to study on weekends. These are individuals who are taking of their own time to provide themselves with the knowledge that they need to assist the various small communities throughout our province. I have personally received over 20 letters within the last week since I made the statement in the House concerning their interest in receiving the education that can only be provided by the Ontario Fire College. Can I ask the Attorney General, the Solicitor General, in his newly appointed role, whether he will, in fact, lean over and talk to the Treasurer about getting the adequate funding to provide the budget that will be necessary to fund the year 1987 and provide these people with the kind of training that they absolutely, out of necessity, have got to have.
I'm even more grateful for the supplementary question, which allows me the opportunity to share with the honourable member, I know a view he has, that the important contribution that volunteers make not only to the fire departments across the province, particularly in the smaller communities, but the auxiliary police forces make.
They're very good too.
I thank the honourable members for the applause. It gave me an opportunity to think deeply about this question. Both he and I share the view that everything that is possible to do should be done within the limits of fiscal responsibility to assure that the appropriate education is made available at appropriate levels to those who can benefit from it in providing this voluntary service. And it may be that my friend and I can go jointly to the powers that be and make this important request, and I'm very pleased to have his cooperation and assistance.
New question?
If Alan Pope would ask questions like that, he'd get answers.
New question?
For you.
New question, the member for Scarborough-Ellesmere.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a question for the Minister of Colleges and Universities. I wonder if the minister is prepared to investigate the massive budget cuts which were announced at Centennial College.
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, I remember the days, they weren't so long ago, when we used to stand up and say, I want to thank the honourable member for the question. Well, I want to thank him for the question, because it gives me an opportunity to correct the misinformation that he's provided for us. There are no massive budget cuts at Centennial College, nor at any other community college. In fact, as my friend will know, over year, the budgets of our community colleges have increased by some 10.9%. If you call that a budget cut, Mr. Speaker, then I don't know what.
Supplementary?
It's unfortunate that the minister is not better informed. According to the president of the college, they have a deficit of $2.7 million, which they're not by law permitted to have, and that will result in cuts. The staff and students are asking that you investigate, have a look at the books, find out what's going on at Centennial. And what I want to know from the minister is, number one, will he investigate these cuts because they are being made? And secondly, because the college has experienced an increase in its student population, can he guarantee that whatever cuts must be made in order to match the deficit, that there will be no loss of jobs, and that the quality of education will not be compromised?
Well, Mr. Speaker, what I can guarantee my friend is that the steps that we've taken with Centennial and our other community colleges over the past 17 months have improved dramatically the quality, not only at Centennial, but as my friend will know, at colleges right across the province. Now, he refers to a deficit. I don't think the appropriate definition for a deficit is a budget cut. The fact is that there was a rather dramatic increase in funding at Centennial, and there were many additional professors and teachers hired at Centennial. We're aware of the situation of a small deficit in their budgetary process, but we're sure, given the increase in student population there, that we will be able to cope with it, and we are looking at that. But that's not a budget cut, as my friend suggested, that the ministry imposed upon Centennial College.
New question, the member for Sudbury.
Question for the Minister of Energy. Minister, your government over 3 months ago promised the people of this province that you would provide a safety panel made up of international experts to look at the whole question of nuclear safety, to look at nuclear plants from the point of view of design and operations, as well as emergency plans to protect the population. 3 months has gone by. Where are the plans?
Minister?
Mr. Speaker, this has to be very clear. The Minister of Energy does not participate in the emergency plans. That's the Solicitor General, and I'm sure the honourable member is aware of that. The other thing that I must say is that we are, in fact, looking to the kind of person that can fulfill that role, to inspect our plants across Ontario and hopefully extend it, because the Honourable Minister Marcel Mass in the federal jurisdiction has agreed to give his wholehearted support on that kind of an examination. It's underway, and I expect to have within the next short while the name of the chairperson that's going to do that very important examination.
Supplementary?
First of all, I'm surprised at the answer. You promised in August well over 3 months ago that you were going to establish a safety panel that would ensure that nuclear power plants in this province would be looked at by international experts. We've had Darlington has proceeded on schedule. We have both Bruce and Pickering in the final stages. Now, how is it going to be possible to make design changes? How is it going to be possible to change operations of those plants given the time that's gone by? You're making it almost impossible for that plant, for that panel, to have any kind of substance to it. When are you going to act?
Mr. Speaker, I've already told the honourable member that we are in fact acting, and we're doing it in a very responsible way. And the individual that will head up the examination the individual that will be taking the lead role in examining the safety of our reactors in Ontario has to be very carefully chosen. And that is underway. And it's a very important undertaking by a government that fully understands that it has to be responsible to the people. We're going to examine our CANDU reactors like they have never been examined before. And that's why we need the kind of person that I'm going to see performs that very important task. And I'm sure the people of Ontario are going to be well satisfied with the person that's chosen, and I will be certain that you will as well, Mr. Member.
Final question, the member for Etobicoke.
Question of the Minister of Commercial Relations. Has the minister been quoted accurately in saying that he will not do anything for the 40 home buyers that have have agreements to purchase homes in the Bolton area from the Georgian Group? Is that a correct statement? Can he not do anything? And why does the minister not introduce legislation that will deal with this problem?
The members asked the question. Minister?
Mr. Speaker, what I said is that I'm not doing anything until I get a full report. What has happened is that I have talked to one of the principals of the company who maintains that he had a conditional sales agreement that was perfectly legal and binding. I've had officials from the new home warranty plan meet with the municipality, meet with the builder. I have yet to receive their report. Until I do, I don't know what it is that I'm acting on.
For oral questions has expired.